So I finally played Metroid 2. My name is Tobias, or Mr. Blubberbutter, whichever you prefer. This will be a short video. Metroid 2 is a really bad game. It is not great. I feel like I should preface this. I didn't really enjoy playing Metroid 1, but I didn't think it was bad, just dated. It was from an era before my time. I was spoiled by modern standards and thus had a hard time enjoying something clunkier and more tedious. Metroid 2, I cannot say the same for. This is not an aged masterpiece. This is clunky and irritating even for its time. Metroid 1 is a great game. A great game that's just a little too old for me. Metroid 2 is not. Granted, some of this I think is related to the graphics. The lack of color, therefore visual diversity, means that everything looks really, really similar. They tried to make things look different, but they didn't really succeed. Everything looks bland, and it is difficult to tell the various areas apart. Again, a lot of this comes down to the fact that there's no in-game map. Playing this with a map helps mitigate some of that, but that's beside the point. The music. The music is really, really disappointing to me, actually. After the amazing music from the original Metroid, I had much higher hopes. Granted, this is a Game Boy non-color game, so I know the quality is going to be quite a bit lower, but the music was just not that good. The first game had a matching soundtrack to add to the ominous, isolating, near-horror experience of the first game. It felt alive. The music and the game were one and the same. The second game's music honestly felt like an afterthought. Like, it's not all bad, but it just felt slapped on, like an addition to the original game. Most of the music felt weirdly whimsical, but not adventurous and majestic, like almost quirky, like your mission in itself was a silly misadventure. I imagined a plastered Indiana Jones stumbling into every single trap, not a warrior on a mission to save the known galaxy, or, in this case, exterminate an entire species. Of course, there are exceptions. Some of the music did feel more adventurous, but none of it felt that atmospheric. And honestly, the music was literally the best part of the first game, so the fact that they dropped the ball here is just so disappointing. And again, this comes from the limitations to the Game Boy non-color, but the sound effects themselves were just really jarring and abrupt. It's such a weird contrast from the first game, the loud honking of Samus getting hurt, and the weirdly abrasive fanfare of Metroid approaching, even the little jingle when you pick up an item. Everything feels off and disjointed. Maybe this was intentional, it just didn't work for me. It didn't add to any atmosphere, it just felt fake, tacked on. Even more so than the first game, this one seems to rely on you just getting lost and brute forcing yourself through labyrinths to make progress. Which brings me to a large complaint I have about the series as a whole. Speaking as a fan, keep in mind. I like exploration. I like uncovering my map and connecting the dots. I like putting the final piece of the jigsaw together and opening that door that I saw at the beginning of the game. These are all fundamental Metroid experiences, within, honestly, the Metroidvania genre in general. These are all fundamental aspects of Metroid. The problem is that many Metroid games, especially the earlier entries, rely on aimless wandering. This is kind of their take on exploration. I don't consider aimless guessing to be exploration, though. I think that's just lazy. I want direction, I want a goal, I want the freedom to deviate from my goal and to fill out my map and find secrets. But the game often feels like I just kind of luckily stumble across my next objective, and that doesn't feel like success or triumph. That seems more like you just happen to get into the right spot. It doesn't feel like you've actually completed anything. Again, this probably comes down to the fact that there isn't a map. I imagine with a map, the whole thing would be a lot easier. You don't really have a good idea of where you're going or what you're supposed to do, you just kind of rely on level design and landmarks to guide you. Unfortunately, this game doesn't do that well, so I cannot even grant them the defense of technical limitations. As previously stated, this game, it isn't good, at least in my opinion, but it doesn't mean that there isn't anything good about it. They fixed a lot of major issues that I had with the first game. One of the issues I had was that you were constantly grinding for health very slowly, and this game had multiple opportunities to replenish your health and missiles, so the health and missile stations really added a lot and made it feel a lot less tedious, so that is a quality of life change that was absolutely necessary. Also, the fact that you can crouch. That is a huge issue I had with the first one. Honestly, I probably would have liked the first one a lot more if I could have just crouched and be able to attack the enemies down below. These two things alone just made this a much better playable experience despite the much worse sound and level design. On the bright side, though, there was a lot more world building. Well, kind of. It was kind of fun and interesting to see the difficult and dangerous evolutions of the Metroid. The combat later on became really irritating. The bosses just kind of homed in on you, and you were forced to somehow create space by avoiding them or bombing them away long enough to start pelting them with missiles. They feel very claustrophobic, but not in like an artsy and intentional way, more like a lazy, misguided, just difficult sense. But it did make each encounter feel like a big deal, which was kind of the point, I think. Now, the plot in this one, while somewhat interesting and relevant for world-building purposes, is pretty bare bones. Basically, the Galactic Federation freaks out about the Metroids after realizing that they might not have had a monopoly on it, so they send a single person to get rid of it for some reason. Or they failed a few times, and so, hey, the last time we couldn't do anything with all of our fucking resources, we sent a single person and she did just fine. So they send you to the home planet to exterminate the entire species. It's a chilling and weirdly concerning plot, but I guess it makes sense if you view them as weapons or monsters with the ability to wipe out entire planets. Although I'm a little uncertain as to why they were such a threat if a single human can destroy all of them on their own home planet, so that's a little bit weird, but whatever. I do think it's interesting to note that thanks to the whole poison mechanic, that meant that the planet itself was containing the Metroids, so the fact that you had to dig so deep to exterminate them meant that something had been in place to keep them from escaping in the first place. That's interesting, and it is explored in later games, but not really touched on a whole lot in this version of the game. The absolute best part of this game, admittedly, was the conclusion. The suddenly cheerful, hopeful music as you escort the baby Metroid with you on your ship was a very nice touch. It felt cathartic and just chill, very different than the escape the planet while it gets ready to blow up thing that they usually do. To be fair, though, Metroid often has these really nice moments, these just rare moments of calm, quiet peace in between all of the isolative claustrophobia that they usually try to throw at you. Contrasting bleakness with hope. That's one of the reasons I was so disappointed that the rest of this game did so poorly with this, but the last moment, that last minute or so, was really well done. Look, if I'm being honest, I have to respect this game as a Game Boy game. It's not even a Game Boy Color game, so there's going to be a lot of limitations, and obviously it's going to be fairly clunky. However, Zelda Link's Awakening had the same restrictions, and they made a phenomenal game with that one, so it's really hard for me to give this game a complete pass. It just feels clunky in a way that it never should have. It is so disappointing compared to everything that the first one did well, and that's coming from somebody who didn't even really enjoy playing the first one. That said, they added a lot of elements here that would go on to be huge staples in the series. The suit, the spider ball, all these things. They didn't do everything poorly. It's just that the medium was not great, and they didn't work with it as well as I really hoped they would. Obviously, I'm not completely alone in this. You saw AM2R, which, if you haven't played it, I don't think I'm supposed to recommend it on YouTube, but it is fantastic. And then Nintendo's actual official remake, Samus Returns, that one's also really good, although very, very different. Metroid 2 is not completely worthless. It has a lot of potential. It just felt like squandered potential. And honestly, that is the most disappointing thing, because I think with a little bit of polish, this could have been a great game. Oh well, it is what it is. I look forward to playing the third one again. This one is one that many people think of as their absolute favorite game. Not me personally. Personally, I'm a Fusion guy myself, but we'll get into all of that when we get there. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, a like or subscribe would be amazing. You all have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.